Hello, my name is John Burris. Thank you for joining me today for this short video called When Your Fascia Turns to Stone, the Silent Hardening of Your Body. And today's video, I'll be taking you through basically old anatomy, how we've been taught to harden, dry out, and turn to stone as we age, and that's the normal. It doesn't have to be that way. So we'll be exploring some of the old anatomy ideas that we're all taught, and I'll be sharing with you some new ideas where you don't have to turn to stone as you get older, and you don't have to dry out, but you're going to have to change how you envision the body, because we're seeing the body all wrong, incorrectly. For thousands of years, we're taught to believe if we just got hard in our bodies, muscle building and weight training and strength building, that it would help us and live forever and we'd have a pain-free, healthy life, and it's just not true. And I found out over my 40 years as a body worker that people who have the hardest body, the fitness people, the athletes, they're the worst bodies I work on. And I probably worked on 20,000 people over 40 years. The athletes, the fitness people, the people taught to believe that a hard body is a healthy body are the dried out people with essentially bodies that feel like stone and marble. And that's not good. And we've been taught to believe the wrong thing. So today I'll be sharing with you some new ideas about what you can be doing and what a better idea might be going forward. I've often heard it said that if one bird flies in the wrong direction, that many will follow. Well, we've been going in the wrong direction because we've following the wrong people. For example, I was taught by the weightlifting culture and the fitness industry and the medical doctors that I needed to harden and tighten my body. And I believe that's taken us in the wrong direction. You know, up until I was about 30 years old, I was the gym rat. I lifted weights and ran and did my aerobics classes, and I was falling apart at the seams because I was so hard and imbalanced, and I decided to change directions and go in a completely different direction because I decided that wasn't working. And what I see in many of my clients, that's not working either, but they keep doing it. The back surgeries, the knee surgeries, the hip surgeries, all based on a hard body that's imbalanced. And we keep being taught that by the editors of these magazines, these fitness magazines, the television shows, all this promotion of a hard body concept. It's killing us, and it's killing us as a culture. And people don't realize there's a better choice. And for me, that choice was to make flexibility and yoga and other things more important than strength training. I don't say you shouldn't be doing strength training, but I don't think it should be the most important part of our exercise routine. I would say 25% the most of what you're doing should be strength training. The rest should be flexibility training, because we're all dried out. We're drying out and we're harming our bodies because we're all turning to stone. Another analogy I like to make is we're all born as a grape and most of us die as a raisin. We're dried out, we're shrunken, we're hunched over. That doesn't have to happen, but it does because we're doing the wrong things. And I'll be talking about what the wrong things are and how to correct that and do the right things. So there are better choices we could be making in our life, and most people don't make those choices because they're giving a false premise. For example, currently, the president just reaffirmed the President's Council on Physical Fitness, and I think that's a mistake. We shouldn't be teaching our young people to be hard, dried out, stone-like warriors. Instead, we should be teaching them flexibility in school, whether you call it stretching or yoga, whatever you call it. First, you'd have far fewer athletic injuries if people were more flexible, and they wouldn't dry out as they age. They wouldn't turn into marble and stone as they age because they'd be doing better things for their body. So government policies also dictate how we go in our life, and I think that's a mistake. We should be teaching flexibility at a young age and not strength training, because strength training will dry you out and turn you into stone over time. So this all comes down to our envision of the bodies, and it all comes down to the fascia of the body. The fascia is like the white stuff in an orange. It wraps around the orange, it encompasses everything, and the fascia has been altogether ignored by the medical community, by the fitness industry, by the media for forever. It's been there, it's not new, but it's been ignored, and it's the fascia that dries out, hardens over time, and basically gyms are drying you out. You know, gyms are death to fascia. Essentially, gyms are death to the body because they're drying you out, because they're teaching you to harden your body, and in response to that, you're being dried out and hardened, and you're turning into a raisin over time. And here's a picture of the orange. You see the orange stuff contains the juice, and the white fibers are the membranes around there to keep everything contained. Well, that's like the fascia in the body. The fascia keeps everything contained, and basically it keeps the juice from leaking out. Well, that white stuff is like the fascia in the body. It's been completely ignored by the medical community, ignored by the fitness industry, ignored by the media, and it's probably one of the most important tissues in the body, and that's what will dry you out over time and turn you into stone. And here we have a muscle bundle itself. So the muscle's wrapped in different fibers. For example, there's hundreds or thousands of myofibrils. Those are the muscle fibers that we strengthen and build. So when you lift weights, when you train, when you're involved in the gym workouts or athletic pursuits, you're either trying to build more myofibrils or you're trying to expand them, and that makes you stronger. So there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is, if you don't counteract those shortening of those muscle tissues, you're going to be drying out the fascia that surrounds you. So the fascia is like the white fibers in the orange. It surrounds everything. Every myofibril is surrounded by fascia. And if all you do is lift weights and train, you're going to be drying out the fibers around the myofibrils. So the fascia, which is the insulation around everything, is going to dry out and shrink and harden. So here's the analogy I like to use. This is a bag of fascia, and fascia has fibers in it, elastin, collagen here that creates strength and flexibility. It also has all these cells in here, and those are like macrophages and lymphocytes, and they help gobble up viruses and bacteria and cancers. So your fascia needs to be liquid in order to be healthy. And when it's healthy and liquid, it becomes part of your immune system and actually keeps you healthier. The problem is, as we dry out, the fascia dries out. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes, why that happens. So it dries out. So the cells don't work so efficiently. The elastin, the collagen, the lymphocytes here can't do their job, so your fascia stops working as your immune system. And so it's not good when you dry out. So here's what's going to happen here. So here is your muscle fibers here, and they're embedded in fascia tissue. So when we're healthy, this is like a 4-year-old. Healthy liquid. That's why a 4-year-old will fall down and they'll bounce. They won't necessarily break anything. They'll bounce because their fascia is liquid. It's soft and it's pliable. And so the muscle fibers are surrounded and embedded by fascia. And so what happens when you lift weights and you train, you're trying to build more muscle fibers and expand the ones you have, and that's called strength training. The problem is most people shrink the muscle fibers when they're working out because they don't stretch. They're not stretching, they're not counteracting the effects of the shortening of the muscle fibers. So here's what happens. Over time, your body turns to stone and concrete because you're constantly shortening your muscle fibers and you're shrinking and hardening the fascia that surrounds those fibers. So as you age, you're turning to stone. I know that sounds crazy, but this is a weightlifter. This is the average person in your life you see at a senior center. This is your parents, your aunts and uncles. This might be you. You're turning to stone because you're shortening your muscle fibers when you're working out, but you're not counteracting it by stretching and liquefying the fascia around it. So as we're younger, we go from this to this. So we are turning to stone when we age because most people are doing the wrong things. They're focusing on building muscle fibers, yet they're not stretching the soft tissue or the fascia around those fibers, and it hardens and it dries out and it becomes like stone. That's how the average person ages, and some people age quicker because they're doing more of that. So that's why I'm saying, as a body worker for 40 years, most people are turning to stone because they're not stretching their fascia, whether you call it athletic stretching or something expansive, Feldenkrais, eccentrics, or a regular yoga practice. Most people are deliberately turning into stone as they get older each and every day. And it might start when you're 20. Doesn't have to be in your 40s, 50s, or 60s. I've touched people 30 years old who felt like stone because of what they've been doing their whole life. Doesn't have to happen, but this is what people are doing. They're turning to stone because they're letting their fascia dry out. So frequently I'll touch a client's ankle and they'll say, is that a bone there? I'll go, no, that used to be a muscle and fascia. It's now petrified into literally hard petrified tissue because it's dried out. I'll touch a client's shoulder and they'll go, why is it so hard there? Because I say it's petrified. It's become stone because you haven't moved it, and whatever injury you had in there never moved, so you're petrified. I'll touch somebody's lower back and they'll go, why is it so hard? I go, because you're turned to stone, you've petrified. And so people don't realize, they think it's normal to petrify, and people have numbed out their body not knowing their ankle's so tight, thinking it's a bone. It's not a bone, it's petrified tissue that's dried out and hard. So I often ask, well, if the model is working of the whole fitness model and gym model, why are so many people collapsing? I'll give you an example. Now, I'm not going to mention any names, but this is readily available information from the internet. These were some of my role models who taught me how to work out and exercise. A famous celebrity, a female in the 70s and 80s, made dozens of exercise videos, taught us how to aerobicize and harden her body. Yet she's had both knees replaced, both hips replaced, a shoulder replaced. You know, is it working? So another great Mr. Olympic, Mr. Atlas, Mr. Everything, became a politician. Multiple back surgeries, hip replacement, knee surgery, shoulder surgeries, multiple heart surgeries. He taught us how to lift weights, and is it working? A famous celebrity, famous for his boxing movies and very fit physique, has had 7 back surgeries, neck surgeries, fusions in his neck. A famous golfer, famous for his fitness and his workouts. He's had 6 back surgeries, 4 knee surgeries, an Achilles tendon rupture surgery, and who knows what else. This list is a mile long. These are the people that taught us how to be healthy in our body, and it's not working because their fascia is dried out, hardened, and collapsing. They've turned to stone, and we're still following the model. What's wrong with us? And here's the model we're following. Everybody would say, look how healthy this body is. I would disagree. This is a fit body, not necessarily a healthy body. This is a dried out beef jerky body where the fascia has turned to stone, and it causes issues with shrinking of the torso, collapsing of the spine, rolling the shoulders forward. Diaphragm is collapsed and tight, and all kinds of issues. Yet this is the model we're seeking in our culture. In the work I work on, this is a dead, dying body that's turning to a raisin. It started out as a grape, and now it's turning to a raisin. And this is a suit of armor. This is what happens when you train your body to be hard and tight. You're turning it into a suit of armor of hard, tight, dried out tissue that's lifeless, fused together and dead. This is what we're doing in the gym fitness world. We're teaching our bodies to be a suit of armor, dried out tissue that's dead, lifeless, and lacks life. It's turning into a raisin, it's drying out, it's becoming stone and concrete, and this is what you're doing if you do the gym workout every day. And this is the body more filled with life and energy. As you're in this yoga pose, for example, you see the line of energy moving across the arms. That's life, that's energy, that's liquid. It's keeping the fascia liquid and soft. And you're undoing any stone in the body, any concrete. You're creating life and life force. Also, people don't realize is the life force energy, the chi of the body runs through healthy liquid fascia. When the fascia dries out, you start to have problems. Here's an area where there's a blockage in the fascia. So the fascia has a blockage here where it starts to dry out and become rubbery and stone-like, and then it causes a blockage in the flow of chi through the body. So once the fascia starts drying out, and it becomes a blockage, and it causes all kinds of physical issues as well. So what happens to the fascia over time? There's a concept called hydrogen bonding, which causes the fascia to dry out and glue together. And that chemical process is what people endure. They fuse together, dry out, and become like a marble statue. that's usually what happens. I can't tell you how many times I've actually put my hands on somebody's shoulders. It could be a family member, a friend. We could be in line at the movie theater or a family event, and they go, oh, I got a knot in my neck. Can you work on it? And I put my hands on them and go, wow, you feel like a marble statue. If I close my eyes, I wouldn't know the difference. How did you get so hard? This could be a 30-year-old, a 50-year-old, a 70-year-old. I go, wow, you feel like stone. That's not supposed to happen. And so over time, I would feel people's bodies and going, how did they get so tight? That's not supposed to happen, but that's the norm in our culture. Touch makes a difference, and touch doesn't lie. Your body doesn't lie. If you feel like stone, it probably means you're stone. Your fascia has dried out and glued together, and you might not even be aware of that. And now we'll explore the 5 major reasons why your fascia turns to stone. And then we'll show you after that how to undo that. So here's what happens to the body. Remember we talked about we go from this as we're younger to this as most people get older, and it could start early when you're 20 and doesn't matter. So what happens from here to here? And that's what we'll talk about here. So first of all, one is lack of movement. We all need to move to be healthy. You don't want to see a river that's plugged up. Movement's healthy for our bodies. So when you don't move, you harden. We see that in people in the hospitals who get bed sores because they don't move and the circulation stops flowing. You need to move. So movement is important. And unfortunately, most people move the wrong ways, and that's what we're talking about here. So movement needs to happen, and we need to move in the right ways. For example, I see a lot of people who have manual labor jobs in first world countries, second world, third world. They're up in trees every day. They're walking 8 miles to work. They're in the fields, and people are saying, well, look how healthy they are, how strong they are. Yet they're old by the time they're 40 because they're dried out, because they might be developing more myofibrils, muscle fibers, but their fascia is hardening as quick as possible because they're moving the wrong way. And most people living day to day don't have time to do an hour of yoga after work because they're trying to survive. So a manual labor job, working your body, is going to destroy your fascia and make you age really quickly. That's why you'll see people who are 50-year-old living in a third world country look really old because they're dried out, because their fascia is hardening and drying out. The second reason is uncared for injuries. So for example, when I touch somebody's ankle and it feels like stone, petrified tissue, I often ask, well, what happened here? And there's always an answer. Well, I broke my foot when I was 17 skiing and I thought it was better, or I had multiple ankle sprains playing soccer when I was in college. I thought it was better. We get numbed out to our body. We don't take care of injuries, and they linger and they dry us out because the muscles in an injury will stay hardened and the surrounding fascia will dry out and the nerve will become numb so you don't even know it's there. So you go, well, I'm better. That was 20, 30, 50 years ago. I'm better. Well, it's not. I can't tell you how many people I've experienced who had skiing accidents 50 years ago, or repetitive injuries. Skiers who skied every day for 30 years. Like, why is your body so hard and tight? Runners whose legs feel like rocks. They're rocks, they're stone. And that's what happens. We turn to stone. And so basically, if you have uncared for injuries, they're going to harden and dry out, and you're going to be aging pretty quickly. The third reason is stress. When you're under stress, which is essentially fear, you're going to be shortening your muscles and hardening the tissue around there. So somebody who lives with a lot of stress and doesn't take care of it, they're going to be hardening and drying out, and everything starts to shrink because they're drying out and they're hardening. And that's what happens when you not actively taking care of your stress levels. So the manual labor job we talked about there, we talked about the stress, the uncared for injuries. And here's the one people don't realize: fitness dries you out. I know it's crazy because we're taught to believe, go to the gym, get a gym membership, work out, People don't realize that's killing us. You know how many firefighters have back problems? Members of the military, police officers, because they're hardening and tightening their body. The whole epidemic of back surgeries are because the fascia is too tight and people are doing the wrong thing. So the fitness industry is causing you to dry out. Not that you can't build strength, but I don't believe it should be more than 25%. And the other 75%, you need to be stretching the surrounding fascia. Because if you don't stretch your fascia, you will dry out and harden. That's why so many athletes have injuries. I already had the list. I could go on and on about the list of athletes who are now analysts on TV who've had hip surgeries, knee surgeries, back surgeries, big wave surfers who've had hip replacements, back surgeries, professional volleyball players. The list goes on and on because guess what? They're not caring for their fascia. They're hardening their body and they're tightening their body and they're destroying their body because they're not liquefying the fascia in the meantime. So it's a mistake that we're in this world of hard, tighten your body. Some of these people go around and teach fitness classes and they have hip replacements and knee replacements and they talk about how well they're doing. I beg to differ. So the whole fitness model, the gym model, the President's Council of Physical Fitness is leading us in the wrong direction. And like I said, gyms are death to your fascia. Health clubs are death. Running is death to your fascia and your legs because most people, you're not stretching enough the surrounding tissue to make it healthy. So fitness is a large part of why the fascia is drying out in the body. And here's what people don't realize. Just because you're doing yoga doesn't mean your fascia is healthy. I know it sounds crazy. There are some yoga practices, they're gymnastic, they're hardcore, they're fitness-based, they're gym-based, which emphasize mostly the fitness strength building practice. I can't tell you how many regular yoga practitioners, when I touch their bodies, are hard and tight because they don't spend any time stretching. It's all about arm balances and strength and core work. And there's very little attached to stretching. I know yoga teachers who don't teach any stretching at all because they have a hardcore boot camp fitness. So just because you're doing yoga doesn't mean your fascia is not drying out. If you have a fitness-based yoga, a gym-based yoga, a gymnastic-based yoga, you will dry out as well because you're emphasizing the building of muscle tissue where you should add twice to 3 times as much of the stretching impact. And here's a classic forearm balancing pose. There's no stretching in this pose. It's all contractive movement, hardening and tightening your body in an isometric contraction. There's nothing wrong with this pose, but you're going to harden and tighten and dry out if you do this over time without doing the stretching poses as well, because this pose will only shorten and harden you, and it will not create a healthy fascia at all. Many yoga poses are like this. They actually dry you out. Another important aspect to mention is the work of Dr. Robert Marshall in interference fields. How vaccines impact fascia. Vaccines will dry out your fascia and cause an interference field, which causes the fascia to glue together and fuse together over time. I can't tell you how many clients I've worked on who've had vaccine injuries to their fascia, especially in their upper arm, because the vaccine will dry out and fuse together fascia tissue. This is all based on my experience as a body worker and the background work of Dr. Robert Marshall, interference fields. So I changed directions when I was about 30. I stopped competing. I stopped lifting weights, hardening my body, and joined the yoga world. And I have no pain at 65. I am completely pain-free, very flexible, healthy liquid fascia, and it really changed my life. So it makes a difference. Here's the average body, stone. When I put my hands on somebody, another body worker, massage therapist, they feel like, hey, that feels like stone. Once again, if I close my eyes and go, wow, that feels like a marble statue. That's what our bodies have become because we've been taught to move in the wrong direction by the wrong people. What I teach is new anatomy. The anatomy we're taught today is old. It's hundreds of years old, basically created in the morgues of London hospitals and 17th century dying people where they cut up bodies and looked at their tissue and go, hey, there's the body. I teach new anatomy, a living anatomy, where you're alive in your body and your tissues are alive and your fascia is alive, and your fascia is one of the most important parts of your body. So how do we keep the fascia alive? So what I did, I stopped going to the gym. Now I would go to the gym, maybe swim and stretch, but I wouldn't lift weights anymore. I got all my strength from my yoga practice, and I also got all my flexibility there. Doesn't mean I didn't do other things, play tennis and racquetball and pickleball and rollerblade, but I emphasized the flexibility part of my life much more than the strength building. That's where people make a mistake. They think they have to be strong and develop strong muscles. That's a mistake based on old anatomy that's thousands of years old, and we're still taught that. So here's the things that I've done that made a huge difference, and maybe you like to incorporate some of them in your life and make a difference as well. Here is a foundation of how to keep your fascia healthy. Now the first one is a Swedish massage. And why is that important? So a Swedish massage doesn't directly work on your fascia. In fact, here's the problem with that. Going to massage school, they teach us we want to work out people's muscles. Well, a lot of their muscle issues are actually fascia-based. And so what massage people do, they burn themselves out because they keep having to try harder. They have to try harder and try harder because these is the fascia layers of the body. And they crisscross back and forth. And a massage therapist will try to dig it out, but it's glued together. It's fused together. So these fascia layers aren't going to budge with regular Swedish massage. But a Swedish massage will work indirectly. It'll make you feel better, which is a relaxation component. It'll bring circulation to your body, which helps your muscle tissue overall. And you'll maybe want to go out and do some yoga or stretching. But Swedish massage by itself will not change your fascia. It's going to be specific fascia work that's going to have to do that. So fascia work is a specific technique where it actually melts the tissue. A practitioner whose skill will take their hands or their elbows or their forearms. It's like stretching taffy, and you start to slowly stretch the taffy. It's a chemical process called thixotropy where the fascia starts to melt and unwind. And I've had many fascia bodywork sessions, and there's many different practitioners and different organizations that do that. You want to get many layers, especially if you have injuries. An injury is hardened tissue that turned to stone. You're going to have to get it melted away. It's not going to go away by massage. You cannot massage petrified tissue. And that's where we as massage therapists make a big mistake. We're trying to massage out a petrified tissue. What I've learned first, I have to use my special fascia bodywork techniques to melt the layers first. Kind of like a tree in a tree ring, is I have to take the bark away, the petrified tissue, before I can even get to the muscle tissue. And after I've taken enough bark away through basically fascia bodywork techniques, I can start working on the muscle tissue. In a way, you have to change the entire chemistry of the injury, because you cannot massage petrified tissue away. You have to melt it away through fascia bodywork, and that sometimes takes times and multiple sessions. The third way is a regular stretching or yoga practice. Now, it doesn't have to be called yoga. If you know how to stretch, an athletic stretch, or other types of what I call expansive movements, eccentrics, Feldenkrais, they help unwind the body. And my yoga practice, when I'm in a pose, you're actually holding the pose, the muscle tissues are warming up, and then the surrounding fascia is starting to melt. So you're using your muscles to create heat, and then you're stretching through the fascia tissues, and you're melting it over time. You're becoming not just flexible, but healthy, because the surrounding fascia that surrounds the muscle fibers is becoming liquid again. You're basically going from a raisin back to a grape. You're reversing that. That's what a regular yoga practice does. And regular, I mean 4 to 6 days a week. You can't just do it once a year while you're on vacation in Hawaii. That doesn't work. That's entertainment. You've got to be regular, and it might only be a half an hour a day. So regular yoga practice will warm up the fascia and stretch it like taffy and start to convert it, taking it from a stone-like feature into a healthy, vibrant feature again. Those are the 3 things that I've done and I recommend to my clients over time in order to recover your body from what a body has been turned to stone. So there you have it. We were born like this. Most people through life become this because they're focusing too much on building muscle tissue without stretching the fascia around it, and they dry out and they harden and they petrify, and we call that normal. We've normalized dysfunction, like we've normalized disease. So there are ways to change it. We have to change our lifestyle, change our perception of our body, and change the direction we're headed. Most people have great intention, but they're doing mostly the wrong things. I have clients come to me who've had 6 or 7 back surgeries, and they go to the gym 6 days a week, and I go, what are you doing? They go, well, I lift weights every day. I go, is it working? No, but my doctor keeps telling me to lift weights every day. And so they're scheduled for their 7th back surgery. So you have to change directions in how we see our body. That's why I offer you new anatomy, because old anatomy is old. It's dysfunctional. It's outdated, but we keep doing it. We keep blessing it, and it's not working. So join me for new anatomy. Subscribe to this channel for new and exciting leading edge videos to come. You can follow me again at my website, johnburris.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. And I have a great book called Return to Nature, The 5 Pillars of Healing. You can pick it up at my website, johnburris.com, amazon.com, or barnesandnoble.com. So thank you for joining me today. Remember, you don't have to turn to stone, but you have to change directions. You have to make your fascia more important than your muscle. Doesn't mean you can't be strong and develop muscle tissue, but you have to stretch more than you strengthen, or else you will turn to stone. I can guarantee you that. Thank you for watching today, and have a blessed journey.